Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving week. Mike Swanson is on assignment. He is playing golf in Maui,
right,
with his family on a vacation that was planned months ago. So I'll do my best to fill in for him. And I'm honored to have this assignment on a truly historic day in Kansas City. Before we get started, I want to introduce the men at the front table. Royals manager Mike Matheny, Senior Vice President of Baseball Operations and General Manager Dayton Moore, Royals Chairman and CEO John Sherman, and Royals Senior Vice President of Business Operations Kevin Ulick, who would like to begin.
Thank you very much, Ryan. John, why don't you stand right here? Dayton and Mike, why don't you come up front? You're the one they want to see. So last January, Mr. Glass at FanFest called for a meeting with Dayton and myself. And it was at that meeting that he told us that the time had come and it was time for the Glass family to sell the team. And from that meeting on, it was very clear to us that there was one person that Mr. Glass really wanted to have this team. He said there was one person in Kansas City who spent most of his life here. There's one person that absolutely loves baseball and loves the Royals. There's one person that's highly respected within the Kansas City community. And best of all, he's had a chance to spend some time in Major League Baseball, owning a competitor of ours, but nevertheless, he's had a chance to actually see what Major League Baseball is all about. Well respected by the commissioner, well respected by the 29 other owners. We really could not think of anybody better to buy this team and to take it forward. So with that, Mr. Sherman, we have something that the entire Royals organization, Dayton, Mike, myself, would like to award you. You are our new number one.
I've got a spot for that, but I don't think Marnie will let me put it on the over the mantle in the living room. Thank you very much.
Well, not many professional sports teams going on 50 years can say this is just the third time we've had a change at this position, any position. And yet here we are after 26 years from founding owner Ewing Kaufman, and Julia Irene is here today. Good to see you. 20 years from David Glass and his family, and now a new era as John Sherman and his investment group officially become the owners of the Kansas City Royals. And many of us are here just to see him, hear what he sounds like, because over the past few months, he became one of the most visible names in Kansas City, but somehow became the most invisible person over those past few months. So it's good to see him and his family here. Mr. Sherman, congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, I've been in an undisclosed location since late August, and although I think Lynn Worthy and Sam Mellinger found me in Arlington last week, so I was glad to see them. Thanks very much for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to come out of hiding and talk about what's ahead of us here. And I'd rather just kind of turn this over to Dayton and Mike and hear about our pitching talent coming up through the minors and other things. But I think and talk about hearing them how we compete for a championship on behalf of our fans. But I think I'm going to back up a little bit. And first off, I wish David would have called me in January, because I would have not done a couple things I did after. He didn't call me until a bit later than that. But I had a great, really had a great experience in Cleveland. It's a class organization, great partners, really good people, and was very, very happy in that situation. In fact, last year in spring training, and I'll talk a little bit about when David did call me, but last year we were in Goodyear for spring training, and spring training is such a great time, right? You're seeing new players come up for the first time. You've got a lot of hope for the season, and I love the way that these camps are run like academies. You're learning new things. You're bringing in new people, and so we were in Goodyear one morning, kind of meeting with our baseball ops people, talking about the future, getting ready for another championship campaign. And my phone rang. In fact, I was with we've got a couple of people here that are part of this group that were partners with me in Cleveland. My phone rang. I looked down on it, and it was a call from Fayetteville, Arkansas. And of course, at my age, I'm a big target for these scammer robocalls, and they tend to all come from Arkansas for some reason. And or at best, they're going to be trying to sell me a Medicare supplement at this point. But anyway, so I ignored the call, kind of went about our business. And then later in the day, we were on our way over to the stadium. In fact, I remember it well. We were playing the Brewers that day. It was a split squad, and we actually had the other half of the team over in Surprise. And anyway, I noticed I had a voicemail. I listened to it. It was David Glass, and I'd been in our suite. Another thing great about spring training, I was in our suite, and we were just talking to Peter Gammons, which is, great sports and business baseball journalist. And but anyway, I saw I had a message, and so the message was David Glass, very casual. John, if you get a chance, give me a call at your convenience. I didn't think a lot about it because we'd developed a relationship. He didn't call me very often, but I was curious. So anyway, I called David. He said, John, I want to give you a heads up. The family's decided to sell the team. Don't know if my timing's right with Cleveland, but you would be my first choice. I think you'd be great for Kansas City. And of course, I just told you what I was doing. I was preparing with the Cleveland Indians for a championship season, so the wheels were spinning, pretty quickly. So I got off the phone. I didn't go back in and talk to Peter Gammons. I actually took a walk around the stadium to think about this a little bit. But anyway, long story short, called David back a few days later. I told him we would try to make this work. He said, that's great news. If you try to make it work, I'll do everything in my power to make it happen for you. I had to talk to my partner in Cleveland and the commissioner. Everybody kind of coalesced around that, and we went to work. And these are complex transactions. This took a while. This call was back in, it was early in spring training. I'm looking at Brooks, but we've been kind of heads down on this deal for about 6 months now, and got it closed yesterday. But I guess a couple of things. First of all, I really want to express my appreciation for David Glass, one, for giving us this extraordinary opportunity, but also what he's done for Kansas City, and not just for bringing a World Series championship back here, but for what he did helping you and Kauffman kind of navigate that transition back in the 90s, which was very, very important time. So great, big thanks to the David Glass and his family. I'm also very thankful for Ewing Kauffman. Julia, I asked Julia to come today. Thanks for coming. It means a lot to me, Julia. But Ewing Kauffman, he's someone that had some influence on me. I serve with Julia at his foundation today. Our first company actually was a finalist for the Mr. K Award back in the, when was that, early 90s? Early 90s. And so learned a lot about his philosophy and had an impact on me. Very simple. It was about how you treat people, how you reward people, and that you give back to the community. He said it a little differently, but I thought that's very simple. And you think about business, we all put these mission statements on the wall and enshrine them, but really it's pretty simple. And I really thought that those three principles told me a lot about why the business was successful. He's also gone on to, you think about Mr. Kauffman, maybe we wouldn't have the Royals, wouldn't have Kauffman Stadium, wouldn't have the foundation, wouldn't have the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts, which is another great asset in our city. And Mrs. K's Foundation, that's right, which Julia leads, and she also leads the Kaufman Performing Arts Center, which not only is it a world-class performing arts center, it's well managed both from an operational and financial standpoint, and that's not the case around the country. So the community has continued to benefit from their family's work. I also asked Bob Kendrick to come today. I think it's another treasured asset in our community is the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. If you've ever had a chance to go over there, they tell this. It's a great story. They tell it great. While it's about baseball on one hand, it transcends baseball. And if you walk through there with, I almost said walk through there with Buck, but but if you walk through there with Bob, you kind of feel like Buck is taking a stroll with you. So I think that's an important part of our city and our baseball heritage. I think I'm right that the leagues were founded in 1920. Monarchs were an initial franchise, if they called them franchises. But so next year will be the 100th year anniversary of professional, Negro Leagues baseball in Kansas City. There should be something to celebrate next year. Talk a little bit about the ownership group. There's lots of things I like about the way this deal came together for us. The opportunity to do this in your hometown is very, very special. And so Brooks and I began to raise the capital for this transaction. We focused on Kansas City. The bankers that do this in sports told us, you'll probably be able to raise most of it here in Kansas City, but you might have to go to New York or Chicago or somewhere else. Well, we raised it all here in Kansas City. 100% of the group either runs their business here, built their careers here, raising their family here, or they grew up here and have a connection to Kansas City and the Royals, and this was a way for them to reconnect. This is maybe the historians can correct me, but I think until the Nationals just won the World Series, I believe that we're the only franchise from the 1969 expansion class to have won a World Series. And we've been to 4, and we've won 2. I mean, it is a proud and storied franchise. In fact, George Brett, I had lunch with George about a week ago, a generational player, Hall of Famer. And we reminisced about that first pitch that he hit off of Goose Gossage in 1980 into the upper deck in Yankee Stadium. I think I was in a bar in Westport when I watched it on some... You couldn't have been. But on some grainy television up in the... But it was... I remember that night. I was 25 years old, and the horns were honking late into the night. You would have thought we won the World Series that night. And so that was... and there have been a lot of special moments. And then certainly the 14 and 15 run, was a lot of fun. And I think the All-Star game... I had the sense that when we had the All-Star game in, was that 12, that kind of baseball was on the comeback here, and then the Royals did it on the field. I'd like to, I just say our objectives, and I'll let Mike, and after this meeting, I'm going to let Mike and Dayton keep you updated, but our objectives are to compete for a championship on behalf of our fans. I've heard Mike say it, and I've heard Dayton say it, that we're going to try to do it on a sustainable basis and have sustained success. I feel, I want to open this up for questions, but I feel incredibly fortunate today to be sitting in this seat. But I also realize the privilege and responsibility that we have in this seat on behalf of our fans, our players and coaches, our associates, and our community. I look forward to the challenge. Thank you.
Before we get to the questions, I'd like to share with some of you a picture. Many of you have seen it. You probably have seen it many times, and now you just walk right by it. This is April 12th, 1955, Municipal Stadium. This is the first game for the Kansas City A's. That's then former President Truman throwing out the first pitch. It was a game with the A's and the Tigers. And when we learn more about Mr. Sherman and Mr. Glass's relationship, the word hand-picked keeps coming up. Among many responsibilities that Mr. and Mrs. Sherman have taken on for the good of our city is the Truman Library Institute. And Mr. Sherman was the chairman of the board, member of the board for 9 years, and I believe Mrs. Sherman is still a member, correct? So obviously, President Truman and his legacy is very important to him and his family. So in this picture right here, you could say that modern Major League Baseball was born in Kansas City, April 12, 1955. John Sherman was born on April 12, 1955. So how's that for hand-picked? And I believe you have this in your house, correct? Yeah.
My office.
Okay, before we get to questions, since we are sitting underneath the Royals Hall of Fame, I would like to officially acknowledge two very special people here today, Hall of Famers. Mr. Sherman mentioned George Brett, who's sitting up front with Julia Irene Kaufman, and Denny Matthews, who is very modestly sat in the back of the room, are two Royals Hall of Famers and Baseball Hall of Famers. So. So now I'm going to turn it over to you. I will ask you to be very patient with the rookie up here at the podium. We are broadcasting live on television and on radio, so for the benefit of people listening and watching, if you could raise your hands if you have a question and wait until the microphone comes to you. Acknowledge your name, if you will, so everyone knows who is asking the question before we turn it over to the podium. And we'll begin with Jeffrey Flanagan and then Joel Goldberg.
Thank you.
What kind of advice did David Glass give you about operating a small market team, and how much different will your approach be, you think?
Then David?
Yes.
You know, I don't know that he's given me a lot of advice. He said I can call him if I want some advice, but I think he believes that there's different ways to do this, and and I think about the two owners we've had. You know, I think you and Kaufman bought this team. If I'm correct, he wasn't a baseball guy, right? Wasn't a base? No. And he, but he was innovative.
It was bought for his health, to be a hobby.
But he was innovative, and in the franchise, you know, we went to the playoffs, 7 years from 76 to 85. Pretty impressive in the early days of an expansion franchise. You know, I think David, when he took it over from the community foundation, or he was actually involved then. I think it took a little while, you know, till he found Dayton. Dayton rebuilt the franchise, the farm system, the international business, and I think we saw the results of that in 14 and 15. You know, when you think about how would I approach it, I think we have some pretty interesting models. I will say I learned a lot in my 4 seasons in Cleveland. You know, they've done a very good job. I think they've had 7 consecutive winning seasons. The 4 seasons we were there, we averaged 94 wins. Now, part of that's good fortune. You know, I was there at the right time, but I think, you know, it seems like small market teams need to be smarter. You have to evaluate and draft well. You have to develop well. You have to use your resources smartly. You know, I think. We're able to do some things in Cleveland, wrapping up some people pre-arbitration or early arbitration and date. You know, this team has certainly done some of that. And then you got to be willing to, when you have the opportunity, I think you have to be willing to, you know, trade some assets away to compete. And that's kind of been my experience. If I think about the 4 seasons in Cleveland, you know, I got a lot to learn here, and I think that. These guys are pretty optimistic. I heard Mike say, I'm not going to call it a rebuild. And I think that's probably right. In some ways, it's a transformation. I got a text from Mike, by the way. I have great respect for the guys in uniform that cross the line every night, and their job is to send the other guys home with a loss. And Mike sent me a text the day of the approval, and he said, I can't wait to join the fight with you. And you know, that's a word that I think the guys in uniform use, and I very much appreciate that. But I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah. Okay.
Joel?
Mr. Sherman, congratulations
Thank
to
you, Joel.
you and your family and your group, your investment group.
Thank you.
Everyone I've talked to that knows you in town, they basically say the same thing. They say he's contributed to this cause, he's helped out with this, and he loves baseball. What is it about Kansas City and baseball that is so special to you?
Well, I think Kansas City, I've been here for 40 plus years. My wife is a native. We raised our kids. We built our business and our career here. And so I kind of go back to again, it's not just Mr. Kaufman. I think there are lots of people in this community. It tends to fight above its weight if you think about philanthropy. And there's lots of names, Kemper and Hall, and I almost hesitate to start saying them because I'll leave somebody out. But so I think, I don't know if it's in the water, but there's a lot of great examples here. And then I think just from a business standpoint, I think when you give back to a community, and the Royals certainly do that as an organization, I think it adds to the fabric and all of all people associated with that. Now, baseball, why do I love baseball? I think, when you were born on April 12th, 1955, everybody loved baseball. We played it as kids. My father was born and raised in Brooklyn, and even though he was mad that they moved to the West Coast, we were Dodgers fans when we were young. I spent part of my adolescence in Washington, D.C., so became a Senators fan. And in fact, I don't know if anybody can verify this, but I think I saw Frank Howard steal the first and only base of his career, and the earth shook. Yeah, and then when we came to Kansas City, it was a great time to get on the bandwagon with the Royals in the mid to late 70s. One of the things that was so great about that 1980 home run is that I think we lost to the Yankees in 76, 77, 78. I was tired of seeing Reggie Jackson and Chris Chambliss. Probably not as tired as you were, but and so this is kind of my adopted home, and so love Kansas City and love baseball. That's probably accurate. Love a few other things too. Don't. I'm a little more interesting than that.
Todd?
Todd Lebo, Sports Radio 810. One of the things that's been rumbling around for the last several years is the possibility of baseball being downtown, stadiums, things like that. What are your thoughts about that? And I know there's plenty of time left on this lease, but just what are your thoughts about that possibility of maybe rejuvenating some stuff down there?
The possibility of downtown baseball?
Yes.
I do. There is a lot of time left on the lease. If you look out the window here, we have a beautiful place to play baseball. In fact, Derek Jeter told me at the owners' meeting the other day that he loved coming here. That said, there's a lot of interest in fact, while we were in Arlington, we toured the new stadium that the Rangers are constructing right now. There's a lot of real estate development around it. So I think there's a lot of thought that baseball, there's more economic opportunity if it's in denser areas where you can have ancillary real estate. But we'll evaluate that decision or those thoughts or those strategies over the next few years, and it'll be driven by what's best for the club, what's best for our fans, and what's best for the community.
Bob?
Bob Fesco, 610 Sports Radio. You talked a lot about the 70s and the 80s, and a lot of us, memories were formed in 14 and 15 with this Royals ball club and everything. So what were your memories of 14 and 15? Were you watching in the stadium? Were you part of everything that went on?
Absolutely. And I absolutely was. In fact, Marty and I had planned a long trip in 2014, and we were actually in Europe. I had not really thought we would be in the World Series. I'll admit that in 2014. So Marty found me in the middle of the night watching one of the games on my phone, And she said, why don't you just go back to Kansas City? And I said, are you serious? And I looked her in the eye, and she said, yeah, I'm serious. And so I did come back. So I was back here for game 6 and 7. Then I went back and caught up with the family in Europe. So she's saying that I didn't. What you said? I wasn't serious. I said, yeah, you were serious, because I left. Now she says she didn't think I'd do it, something like that. But no, the 14 and 15, that was magic, you know, and that's what's great about baseball. Joel's question, you don't know what's going to happen when you come out here. I think about lots of memories. We talked about the 1980 home run. I think about Game 1 and well, the wild card game speaks for itself, but Game 1 in 2015. You know, it wasn't. I know Escobar. Is that the game he led off with an inside the park home run? So you think things are starting well, but late in the game, you know, it was kind of, we weren't really doing much, but nobody left, right? And Alex Gordon steps up and cranks that ball into, and that's magic, right? We all get home at 1:30 in the morning, and we come back the next day, and that magic culminated in a great parade that I think I heard Mike say you thought that was photoshopped. Mike saw that picture of the parade. He couldn't believe that wasn't altered, but no, the 14-15 run, and it's kind of what makes you hungry to get back, right? I mean, these guys, there's a lot of things that the baseball gods have to smile on you. You got to have some breaks, but what those experiences, October baseball, the magic of October baseball, and what it does for fans and a community is pretty special.
Sam
Mellinger with the Star. John, you've talked a couple times about your objectives with the team, but what do you see as the owner's role in that, and how would you describe your leadership style?
The owner's role. You know, I think I'm an investor. These guys are baseball professionals, and you know, every day I'm trying to learn more about the game so I can help them be successful. But I think our role is to understand what the objectives are, make sure we got really good people hired to carry them out, and then find out where we can help and how we, you know, allocate resources at the right place and the right time to help us field a competitive team on a sustainable basis.
Cody
Tapp, 610 Sports Radio. Yeah. John, when you and Dayton first talked, I guess what were those initial conversations like, and then how shared or how similar do you think your visions are for the club going forward?
Well, when we first talked, he talked, I listened. But no, I think we've spent a lot of time together. I have great respect for what Dayton has accomplished here. And when I say transformed, I said, you know, I think we all know what he accomplished when he came here in 06 and rebuilt the franchise. And when I listen to him now, I really do mean I think we're transforming. You know, we're using our core competencies, the things we're good at. My sense is we have really good baseball people, we have really good teachers, but then we're also adding the other things that, you know, analytics. Everybody talks about analytics, but that's kind of a given, right? You've got to have the data. How you use the data, whether it's for in-game decision making, lineup construction, or the thing that seems to be kind of at the leading edge right now is technology. You know, biomechanics, sports science, behavioral science. You know, anything we can do to help our players be more effective to gain an edge. So I'm excited about the direction that Dayton's taken, and I want to know how it can be helpful.
Dayton, you want to comment on your early conversations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think Kevin summed it up really well. I mean, as a group, as a leadership team, we were just extremely thrilled that Mr. Glass had sought out Mr. Sherman. We certainly knew of his reputation as a person in this community and what he's done to help this community thrive and unite. And the fact that he'd been a part of Cleveland, an organization that we have great respect for, an organization that does it very well. And, you know, we just felt that the change in ownership was coming at a perfect time for all of us as we're looking to move forward in a very productive and positive way. And so our vision is very simple. as we said before. We want our fans to absolutely enjoy coming to the ballpark and celebrate our players. And we want Mr. Sherman and the ownership group to love this team and to enjoy watching our players play. And so we'll work very hard as a baseball operations department to ensure that happens. But the importance of the relationship that we have between Mike and myself and Mr. Sherman and myself and Mike is so important and so crucial, as you all know, for sustained success. And we can't wait to get going. I mean, this has been a process that we've been antsy about as a group to get going and get working together, because we know how excited he is and this ownership group, and we're ready to go.
Alec?
Alec Lewis, The Athletic. Congrats, John.
Thank you.
I'm curious, as you're walking around the spring training ballpark after having just talked to David Glass, and thinking about things, I don't know if you can remember this, but what was going through your head? I don't know if you had ever envisioned something like this happening, but what was going through your head?
No, it was a surprise to me. I had called on David probably 5 years earlier, and he wasn't going anywhere at the time, and actually encouraged me to think about and maybe being a partner in another team. He was very helpful, introducing me to the commissioner and helping me get positioned for that. But that call was very much a surprise. And it was also such a change in mind shift that was really kind of processing that. And I kind of kept it to myself for a while because, after I thought about it more, I thought if we could get the support of the people in the league, and we could agree on things like value, if it was workable. As much fun as I was having in Cleveland, this is kind of a generational opportunity and very compelling to do it in your hometown. It didn't happen in a day by any means. I mean, again, great partners in Cleveland, really good people to work with and for. But this is a special opportunity here.
Neil?
Mr. Sherman, Neil Jones from Channel 5. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For those of us of a certain age, we could recall coming to the ballpark most nights or most days and seeing the Kaufman family with Mr. Kaufman front and center along with his wife and Julia Irene and he was a fan. I mean, when there was a bad call, he's up yelling at the umpires.
Yeah.
When it's a home run. And there was something, and I remember talking to ball players at that time, and they said, "Oh no, we're very aware. We've got a big fan up there." No one can predict the future, but are you going to be a guy who's going to be visible at the ballpark where we can see you throwing stuff?
Yeah, I think
to the
so.
umpires?
There are some guidelines on owner decorum today, so you don't want to be the story. That's kind of the rule. But no, I think that not only me, I think we have an ownership group here that is very, very passionate about this team. And some of them, we actually have a couple of generations in our ownership team. Some of them probably more connected to that 85 era, some more connected to the 14, 15, or they came to the 85 era with their dad, and they came to the 14 and 15 era with their kids. And so I think you will see an active owner's suite, and you'll see us around the ballpark.
Greg?
Mr. Sherman, Greg Ekman, KCUR.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because you've been described as a very low-key individual, and now that you're the majority owner of a Major League Baseball team, how would you describe your comfort level with being in the public eye now?
Well, the term low-key is relative. You could ask some of these guys over here that I've worked for a while. Being in the public eye, it's not something that like I said, you'll be talking to these guys more than me, but by the same token, I think this responsibility, I plan to be available, when needed and when's necessary. But no, it's not. I don't really. There's a lot of bright lights on me this morning. It's not necessarily. I'll be glad when the day's over. Let's just put it that way. But again, special opportunity, special group of people to be associated with.
Todd Lebo, Sports Radio 810 again. There's a lot of people in the ownership group. the old Harry Truman phrase. I'm assuming the buck stops with you. You're the guy up here on the stage. But how, when you're managing people who aren't just, people below you, these are other owners, very successful business people. How are you guys kind of go through those kind of decisions? I'm assuming everything is, you're the final decision.
How will we go through those decisions? Yeah. Well, first of all, this is a special group. I mean, I know most of them very well. I know some of them less so, but all people that have been vetted and diligenced, and people with expertise in finance and business, entrepreneurs, sports business. Paul Edgerly is here today. He's on the board of the Boston Celtics. Grew up here, went to K-State. Also on the board of AS Roma, the soccer team in Italy. Kent McCarthy's not here today. He is part owner of the Sacramento Kings. Went to KU. Grew up here. Wants to retire in Lawrence. But anyway, we have an advisory board. We have a kind of a core group of people that I want to give input to and get feedback from. But yeah, at the end of the day, I have to, that it's really Major League Baseball. The MLB wants these businesses to be run or to generally be led by a person and not run by committee. That doesn't mean we're not collaborative. I don't want to be. These are people whose counsel I greatly value. So I'll get a lot of feedback from them, along with the kind of the professionals that we on the staff. But at the end of the day, yeah, you can hold me accountable for those decisions.
Flanny?
John, just curious what your impressions are of the team on the field, the talent on the field, and how far you think they are away from being a playoff contender again.
That actually is a question that I think like everybody else, we have a core group of talented position players. We have some players this year that kind of had breakout years. We have some holes to fill, and we've talked about that. We've got some good young people in the system, but maybe, I don't know. I probably rely on date. That's kind of my feeling as a fan. A lot of way, as a fan, I'm hopeful that. But these are the professionals that'll tell me, how quickly can we bring that talent up? How do we manage their careers, and when will they be ready? And I'd probably defer to you guys in terms of timing.
Well, I mean, we've talked about, our vision for our players, but I think the important way to answer that question is, every decision that we make, whether it be to enter into a long-term contract with a free agent or a player that we have on our 40-man roster, that's something that we'll work together on. That's something we'll communicate. It's our job to motivate Mr. Sherman to follow our plan. And the only way to do that is to communicate daily about the expectation of players, the vision of our team. When do we think certain timelines are going to occur? And so we'll do that on a daily basis. That's what we love to do, Flanny, as you know. We love talking baseball. We love talking about the future of the team, and that's what's going to make this a lot of fun.
Sam?
John, you talked a little bit before about your experience in Cleveland and what you learned there, but obviously you've been into baseball, you've been into business. What surprised you? Like, what did you not expect that happened during those 4 seasons?
Well, I was, probably the biggest surprise is how interesting the business is. It's just a fascinating, we love the game, but I really had no idea how advanced things were relative to player development and skills and mental skills, whether it's analytics or science. It also made me recognize the pressure that some of these young ball players are under. These are freakishly talented people, but that alone won't do it. There's a big mixture of things that determine whether they're successful. But we have, I think the game is developing all kinds of tools around trying to help them, whether it's technology in development, behavioral science, mental skills, dealing with, it's interesting. We have a deep sports psychology group over in Cleveland, and the the two things that Major League Baseball players grade the highest on, kind of relative to the population, are resiliency and the ability to deal with adversity, and then also I think they call it trait anxiety. Low anxiety is important in this game. Can you be in the moment, whether you're a pitcher or whether you're in the batter's box? That stuff was just fascinating to me, and so it made the business more interesting. There's lots of ways to make money, but this, you love the game, and it's just I kind of consider it a really intense learning experience, which I've enjoyed, and kind of look forward to doing more of that over here.
Len?
Len Jennings with KMBC. Congratulations, Don.
Thank you.
When did your desire to become an owner begin? And secondly, what did you learn maybe specifically in Cleveland that you're looking forward to implement here in Kansas City?
When did the interest in being an owner begin? After I sold control of my company in 2013, always liked sports. I had made friends with Paul Edgerly, who I mentioned earlier. Grew up here. He was close to a couple of investors in our company. He kind of helped me get my head around the investment thesis, which was interesting, very different from anything I had done before from a business standpoint. Love the game, so it's kind of the intersection of sports and business. But actually, when one of the early meetings that I had was with David Glass back in 2014, and he actually was the one encouraging me to kind of find, if you could find a spot to kind of get in the game, it would help you. The Cleveland deal was kind of unrelated to that, in that the Dolan family, Paul Dolan's the control person there. They wanted a partner with a business background that knew how to connect with a community, and so we went. So that's kind of how that started, and obviously enjoyed it. The second part of your question was what?
Was something you said you learned a lot in Cleveland? Is there something specifically that you learned that you're looking forward to implement here in Kansas City?
I think first of all, I learned with Paul Dolan, I could see the joy of getting to do this in your hometown. My partner, I could tell how meaningful that was for him to get to do that in his hometown. I think the baseball gods have to smile on you, but in a small market, I think it's the things we talked about: evaluate and draft well, develop well, make strategic moves at the proper time, keep people healthy. I think wellness and recovery is another part of the science that people are investing heavily in.
Vahe?
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Vahe Gregorian from the Star.
Thank you, Vahe.
You've used the term several times, hometown for Kansas City, and obviously it's come to feel that way for you. Can you just elaborate a little bit on what's made it feel like that, how you came to feel so attached to Kansas City, since it wasn't really where you grew up?
Well, I'm looking at my wife here. You're saying home? I've used the word home. Yeah.
Home and hometown, yeah.
I grew up in a military family. My father was career Air Force. So I was born in Japan, split my high school years between Washington, D.C. and Colorado Springs. Got my first job after college here in Kansas City, and have been here ever since. So spent a couple years in Houston in the energy sector in the mid-'80s, but other than that, I've lived here 40-plus years. Just kind of fell in love with liked it as a young person, like it as an adult. Built a couple businesses here and made great relationships. So,
anybody else? All right, Mr. Sherman, thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Happy Thanksgiving. And I know you have a luncheon, and the investment group has a luncheon upstairs in the Hall of Fame. Correct?
Okay.
We're going to be available for any one-on-ones, Mike, from this? Okay, so Kevin, Dayton, and Mike are all available for one-on-ones for those of you who have more questions.
And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thanks for coming out on a holiday week.
Okay.
Thank you.